He's not going to be here.
At this time, I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We do have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? There are no changes. We'll operate under that agenda. The first item then would be a public hearing. This is the public hearing that was called for at our last regular meeting on the tax abatement and business subsidy request. So, excuse me. Oh, yes, I jumped right past agenda item number one. Agenda item number one, and thank you for correcting me, Amanda. Agenda item number one is to consider the approval of the minutes of the meeting that was held on May 13th. So the council does have the minutes of that meeting. Are there any corrections to note?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Amanda, seconded by Craig to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We will move to a vote.
Ooh.
We'll close the voting.
What was the move for?
And the motion does pass.
Well, said adjourn.
Mine says adjourn, and I'm like, well, I don't want to adjourn.
Yeah, I had to refresh mine.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, I'll try it again. Does it work? No. Yay.
Okay. You need Stephen to help with
I mean, I can't do it right now because we don't have anything voting, but I'll let you know of the next one.
okay.
Okay.
With that, that motion does pass. So with that, we'll move now to agenda item number 2, which is the public hearing that I referenced before. This is a public hearing on the tax abatement and business subsidy request. So we will conduct a public hearing, and then after that, then we'll take action one way or another on the tax abatement request, as well as the business subsidy request. So we will open the public hearing. Like all of our public hearings, we'll have a presentation similar to what the presentations were when the public hearing was called for. I'll call first on Lauren Deitz, the Economic Development Director, to give a brief overview, and then she may ask a couple others to give as part of the presentation. And then after that, then we'll open it up for public comment as part of the public hearing. And we'll keep the public hearing open as long as there's public comment. And then after there's no more public comment, either from the audience or from the council, then we'll close the public hearing. When we get to the public comment part, it is important that that whoever is testifying, whoever's giving public comment, come to the podium and use the microphone. And of course, the reason for that is that we are live on social media as well as cable television. With that, Lauren Deitz.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the mayor mentioned, I just want to give a brief overview, not just on the project, but kind of the history of the site and our hotel endeavors over the past several years. So our last hotel was built in 2014. That was the Sleep Inn, built around the time when the Red Baron opened. Since then, we've had several studies completed, market and feasibility, on some different projects, all of which have indicated that there is a need for additional rooms in Marshall and also a need for a higher level hotel in Marshall. All of our hotels are mid-scale or below, so an upper mid-scale would be ideal for our market. We did distribute an RFP for hotels back in, I believe it was 2018, and at that time, our sports commission made it their main priority to get a hotel to support largely our youth sports industry, but also some of the other activities happening in the community. And we have had some previous requests for tax abatement dating back to 2018 and 2019. Neither of those were passed by council. I believe Best Western actually never even made the request to council. This was just estimates that we had done for them. And at that time, council had recommended a hotel abatement policy, which we did not move forward with, as the project then didn't move forward based on what we were able to provide at that time. So the history of the site that we're looking at today, the original acquisition was done from Schwann's, and it was a $270,000 cash price, but then there was another $230,000 in special assessments paid on the site. Our current developer we were working with did purchase that site back in 2022 for $850,000, and one of the outlots was recently sold for $400,000. So we've been working with the Rivosity Rebound Group for 5 years now, and the initial request that we received from the developer was 85% for 15 years on tax abatement, which was roughly $1.1 million. Staff took that request and looked at a couple different options, and today the developer has come forward with a little slightly different request at the 85 to 65 for 10 years, roughly $118,000. And staff's alternative to that is an 80 to 60 over 10 years with $480,000 cap, in addition to a $500,000 forgivable loan. And I just wanted to highlight a little bit more on that forgivable loan. For those who don't remember, this loan is coming out of our obligated pool TIF funding. So we were able to free up this money from our from our increment, our pooled increment, and it is to be used to provide loans, rate subsidies, and other assistance for developers. The caveat to that is that funding needs to be spent by the end of 2025. And with that, we do have a spending plan in place, which highlighted a few different areas, but housing, commercial, retail, industrial, and open spaces. And those eligible expenses are similar to what a TIF project would be. So things like site prep, purchasing the land are all eligible expenses within that funding. So based on the project that we're looking at today, I just wanted to give a broad overview of some of the impact that we will see. Go too far. First of all, on lodging tax, and of course we know there'll be some displacement of lodging tax in our current industry, but based on the revenue projected by the Hampton Inn, we expect to see about $100,000 to $115,000 increase in lodging tax annually, and that again is based on their daily rate and occupancy numbers included in their projections. From a property tax perspective, today the city only collects roughly $3,000 on that site. Once the project is built, and even with the abatement in place, the city will then receive $12,450, and these are all estimates just based on projections. Then once that abatement is done in 10 years, the city would be receiving $80,000 a year in property taxes, again, based on estimates that we received. Some additional just community benefit of the project. Payroll, obviously we're adding some positions, and these are just estimates that we received in that first year of operation, $350,000 in payroll, and then over that abatement stretch, about $4.4 million in payroll to be paid. And then there's a lot out there to be said about how much additional spending that will be had by visitors in the community. So based on our estimates, we believe about $3.5 to $5 million in additional spending is possible with the additional rooms brought online. And then of course the co-location to the arena. It's important. It's a community asset, a community building, and just creates more opportunities for more events there and throughout the community. And then I did just a broad overview with some of our different organizations in town, just to see what some of the need is that exists right now. We all know that we are largely youth sports based, and SMSU is a huge driver of our hotel stays as well. But just to put some numbers to it, of our 3 largest event venues, they have 95 events between May and October this year alone. For youth sports, we're seeing lots of multi-day tournaments, largely in hockey and baseball, but also our fast pitch softball teams, our association. Volleyball hosts some multi-day tournaments. And then SMSU, as I stated, based on the numbers they provided, upwards of 350 rooms per year used for recruiting and for their events that they host here in town. So just giving that broad overview of the community piece, and then I will invite Scott up to do his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Lauren.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Again, my name is Scott Kester with the Rebound Partners Rebound Real Estate Group, and we're the ones that are leading the proposal for the Hampton Inn here in Marshall. Council members and Mayor, you can be rest assured that I've shortened the presentation from we did 2 weeks ago. We'll touch base on the high points, but if there's other questions, obviously I'm here to answer them. or try to answer them. So again, the Hampton Inn, it's a national brand, has the great Hilton Honors loyalty programs going with it, which is what we feel is very important in hotels today. The 84 rooms will have a mix of king double rooms and a few suites, so we can accommodate a broad base of potential guests coming to Marshall. Utilizing the Hampton Inn, it's a very efficient layout for guest flow operations. We have elevators all floors. The amenities with the hotel, we'll have a very nice welcoming front desk and lounge area, seating space, workspace, communal gathering spaces. There'll be an indoor pool. The family-friendly amenity mix with, juice, coffee available throughout the day. An on-site fitness room, and what's unique to the Hilton Hampton brand is all of their hotels utilize the same kind of equipment. So if somebody stays at a Hampton or another Hilton type hotel, they've got the benefit of the same kind of equipment that they would have no matter where they stay. Free hot breakfast, digital key mobile check-in. So as people want to not maybe engage with the front desk, they can actually check in remotely with their phone and go directly to their room. And there'll be, of course, streaming services. I did want to include this one slide that we had from the 13th, just to again refresh memory of our group, Rebound Partners, Revocity, and Rebound Real Estate. We're currently in about 20 outstate communities. That's what we focus on. We've only done one Twin City metro development, but everything else is outstate. We've raised over $32 million of equity. We have 35 properties, either through acquisition or development under contract. Working with local general partners. What these are is we have a lot of general partners in these 20 communities that work with us on project development and project investment. And we have approximately, over 400 investors in our properties. The site, we're all aware of it, right next to the Red Baron Arena. Again, planned out with both our management company and the Hilton Hampton Group for location. Everybody loves this site, just with the access to the Red Baron Arena. Guests can be, they're coming here for a tournament or an event. They can basically walk across the parking lot. So, demand drivers. Back in 2023, our team did a lot of reconnaissance, community interviews with education community members, businesses, and what was coming pretty clear is that Marshall was experiencing visitor leakage, where they did not have a potential hotel brand that they wanted to stay if they were a Hilton member, things like that. So they would travel out of Marshall for the evening and then come back to Marshall for business days. And that was just something that came across. So we feel very comfortable with this hotel for weekday stays as well. We think there's a demand to fill that gap or that will come into play for a branded hotel. Of course, we've got the sporting team events, the business travelers, the wedding venues that Lauren had referenced. So we feel, a lot of good group bookings will be positive with that. Then just some other comments, branded hotels with a degree high of loyalty and awareness is a requested property here in Marshall. I think the community is really looking for it. And then the ability to book through travel agencies, company portals, booking links. The Hilton brand has a great system, which we pay for as a franchisee, but they have a great system for the hotel guest. Development assumptions, 84 rooms. We're estimating a total cost of $16,150,000. The equity raise that we're committing to is about $3.35 million, and that's the private equity that we're going to our current investors, other investors, and that's part of the 400 plus investors that we have throughout our portfolio. working on some sub-debt / preferred equity that there might be a business or an entity that does not want to own in the real estate, but they might be able to help us with the various financing of it. So we're projecting $1 million from there. As Lauren mentioned, the forgivable loan we're showing at the half $500,000, and some additional funding with some smaller regional community lending institutions is what we're also looking to include for this. Operating assumptions, putting this up, upon stabilization, which we're anticipating to be year 3 after opening. We're running the projections between 68 and 70%, and then an average daily rate. So this would be in 2027 of $148 is the ADR that we're talking about. As Lauren mentioned, our request today is we've got a 10-year tax abatement from the city of Marshall. It's at a sliding scale. Once it's determined if the tax abatement with the city, we'll then be working with Lyon County and looking for a similar abatement on a sliding scale there as well. The purpose for the request is to bridge the financing gap and ensure project's feasibility and appropriate return to our investors. We need to support construction of a high-quality modern facility. Hamptons, Hilton hotels are more costly to build, but we think the benefits to the community can be there as well. And we feel that they'll be able to promote economic development, enhance the tourism infrastructure. The public benefits, as Lauren took a lot of my points up already, but increased lodging and tax revenue, visitor spending. Once if more people are staying here in Marshall, that will transition to other businesses. Of course, we'll have job creation during construction, and there'll be additional jobs once the hotel is open. And then the Hampton will provide us with enhanced accommodations for community residents, bringing in family, employers, and of course other visitors. Okay, we missed the one slide. Okay, well, we can talk about it again. Without the tax abatement, we won't have any new development, resulting in the tax revenue of what's currently there at this property. We think there'll be a missed opportunity for economic growth and job creation, potential decline in property values, and attractiveness for future investments in the city of Marshall without a Hampton branded hotel. And, developer may need to choose other cities with other favorable tax incentives to continue to pursue a project. With tax abatement, the short-term incentives should lead to long-term tax revenue growth. It'll encourage additional development and investment that wouldn't otherwise occur, and stimulates job creation investment in the local infrastructure. And we hope it'll enhance property values and area appeal over time. So like I said, we shortened up the slide presentation and tried to keep it to the highlights. So with that, I'll say thank you, and obviously I'll be here for any questions.
Thank you. And then I believe, Michaela, you were going to give a brief summary. Michaela Hewitt representing Baker Tilly, who is the financial consultant who works with the city of Marshall. Michaela.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I do not have a formal PowerPoint, but just restated from the last council meeting, the request of the developer is through both the unobligated spending plan, tax increment dollars, and the tax abatement is all based on performance of the project. Initially, the developer is responsible for obtaining all the financing. You did hear from Scott the construction loan financing, the equity investors, as well as the additional funding. And the structure of the proposed assistance would be the spending plan, the unobligated tax increment would be on a reimbursement basis based on the eligible costs incurred. in pursuant to the terms of the agreement. And the tax abatement would be, again, based on performance of the project being constructed, generating the value. And then the actual terms of the tax abatement assistance would be the developer paying the taxes semi-annually. And then there would be a rebate of a percentage of the new taxes generated by the property that would go back to the developer, again, to reimburse for certain costs of the project. The way that it is structured eliminates any risk from the city in financially providing the assistance, because the developer, again, is responsible for obtaining all of the costs, incurring all of the costs, performing, completing the project, and then paying the annual taxes. So I just wanted to highlight that as part of the financing structure, and we'll step aside if there's no questions and can wait for the hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Michaela. Lauren, I believe that's the end of the formal presentations. We'll now open it up for any public input by any member of the audience who wishes to speak. You can come up and address the council, and as part of the public hearing, the council's role is to listen, to hear. If there are any questions that can be quickly answered, staff might be available to do that, but really the role of the public hearing is to hear public comment. Anyone, whoever wants to come up, can come up and speak as part of the public hearing. And then I'd ask that you, for the record, give your name and your resident address.
Mitch Kernig, residence, address 1206 Stockholm Avenue. I'm here on behalf of my role as the Activities Director for Marshall Public Schools. We host several events throughout the year. A lot of them are requiring overnight stays. Big ones in particular are the Southwest Challenge and the Thanksgiving Classic, I think we named it, for hockey. Both of those we see teams staying outside of the Marshall area, including traveling all the way up to Redwood, Montevideo, Canby, to find housing. So I see us as a group trying to grow our offerings in tournaments, but with limited hotel accommodations, we've kind of put a pause on some of that. So if there was another one giving us some more options, we would like to continue to grow our tournaments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, snuck the other way today. I'm Cassie Weiss. I'm Director of Convention and Visitor Bureau. Thank you for having me up. A few things I wanted to just reiterate that I think were brought up during the presentation. When it comes to the Convention and Visitor Bureau and the Red Baron Arena, we are contracted through the city to facilitate and schedule at the Red Baron. So just starting off with the Red Baron, I think we have had multiple conferences or meetings who will not book out at the arena because we don't have a hotel next to us. So I do see that as being a good draw for new events that would come to town, as well as a selling point to future events as we continue to grow. Like you just heard, our hockey tournaments, and I think Maha is here to speak on that too, it'll also help those tournaments grow as well. As for the CVB, I don't have like specific statistics, but we do hear from a lot of visitors on these things, different groups in town. So sports weekends, we've heard about getting all of those people that are in town for sports being able to stay in town and not out of town. Weddings is a new one that's really gotten big in Marshall with the 2 additional wedding venues, and that's also affecting sports tournaments as well. So just being able to kind of have a sports tournament and a wedding in town the same weekend and keep everyone around here. Also, the additional hospitality and sales tax that would be getting paid by visitors to keep our local taxes down, which means additional funds for the CVB, which means we would be able to continue to work towards our goal to bring in additional conferences, meetings, events. I know midweek is a really big concern for a lot of our hotels right now, and that's something we've been working really hard on, and additional lodging tax would be able to help us with that as well. Believe it or not, but Marshall is turning into a weekend destination location. We've had a few different groups that were at the craft beer show a few weekends ago that literally came to town for the event but ended up staying all weekend. So it's just great to have another example and another hotel and another flag for people to be able to stay at. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Laverne Ike, 1136 David Drive. I have, first of all, no objection whatsoever about building a hotel here in Marshall. Okay, but I just have some reservations and questions. I sent you all a copy of my proposal that I sent to the editor of the paper. He didn't choose to publish it, probably because he might have thought it was too inflammatory, but I don't. So-
Just to correct, I think it was in the paper.
It was?
Deb, it was, I believe.
Not mine. I haven't seen it.
I read it online, so.
You did? I didn't hear back from any of you or the county commissioners either, but Anyway.
Did you send it to the city office?
I sent it to your email.
I never got it.
I didn't get one.
Didn't get it. We didn't get it.
The one thing
It said you
is-
did, but
Yeah,
anyway.
just to comment on that, when you send it to council, we have to be worried a little bit about open meeting law violations. So sometimes there isn't response to avoid
Oh,
having a quorum respond.
Okay.
So,
well,
yeah.
Like,
I
go-
should,
go ahead.
I'll go over some of them then with you. Like I said, I don't have any objection. And I think the hotel at the Hampton Inn in Spicer is a pretty beautiful facility. I don't know if you've ever seen it. The rooms there are about $200 a day. I mentioned $127 a day. That's,
I think you said 148.
yeah. So anyway, they're a little more than that. And I think some of the hotels here are pretty upscale. I know the Super 8's not, but some of them are pretty nice hotels. Anyway, the Rebound Partners, I had a question for those guys. The Hilton, I'm a Hilton Honors member by the way, but did you ask Hilton if they would loan you guys the money to build this hotel?
So Laverne, we're probably not in a,
Okay.
you know, you can kind of state your point, but
All right. Anyway, I thought that Hilton, because they are a multi-billion-dollar corporation, perhaps they would help you instead of coming to Marshall. I know you'd like to have the support. I think you'd get the support from the city of Marshall anyway. But I didn't know what a subordinated debt is. So Rebound Partners were planning on $1 million in subordinated debt. I don't know what that is. Do you guys know?
yeah.
What
When
a
you're done,
subordinated debt is?
I'm going to ask E.J. Moberg when you're done to
Okay.
kind of explain the subordinated debt.
Okay, and then I'll move on to the next one. Article is the forgivable loan of $500,000. Does that mean we're going to give these guys $500,000 and they don't have to pay us back?
That would be the unallocated TIF that was, yes, that would be a forgivable loan provided everything was constructed. That's the way
Okay.
that it's structured right now.
The simple answer is yes.
Yes.
Can the city, we're $100 million in debt with the school bonds and the city debt, $100 million, and we're going to give another guy $500,000 just to get him to build their hotel here? Man, I don't think that's fair to the taxpayer, but maybe I'm wrong. And also, the 10-year city tax abatement, 10 years from the county. People I've talked to living outside the city of Marshall, the county, those guys are really upset about this. Why are we giving away taxes on a piece of property that we could be benefiting on the taxes? I read some of the explanations of that, and I don't know, but I just don't think we have to give away 10 years worth of abatements to get a hotel here, which could be built by the parent company, in my opinion. And then, like I said, I don't have any opposition to your building the hotel, but I'm adamantly opposed to the financial gifts being offered to these people. Thank you.
Thank you, Laverne. So his question about the private equity loan financing, and EJ, not to put you on the spot, but that would be a loan that would really be underwritten by some other business or industry in the community. So basically a loan guarantee, correct?
Typically be a loan that's by a different party. but
Right.
It wouldn't be the primary debt. It would fall behind it in, if something happened and the project did not proceed, the bank or whoever the primary lender is would get paid first before the subordinated debt. They'd be behind them. If I'm differing from that, I hope Michaela or Scott or someone would speak up. You want to speak to that too? Okay. Scott would like to speak to it if it's okay.
Okay,
Yep.
so we'll. Okay, go ahead.
So as EJ referenced, it's a different form of funding, and we've done this on other projects where we have a corporation or a college or another not-for-profit that does not necessarily want to be an investor in the real estate itself, but are looking to help sponsor or assist in the project. So the subordinated debt, it's often also called preferred equity. But it's not the equity of, if you're an owner in the real estate, it's a note. Typically, it's a 10-year note that we would get from the organization. It would be paid, we'd pay them annually, interest only. And then depending on if it's a 10-year note or an 8-year note, there would be a balloon payment. And then that entity would then be repaid their amount of their subordinated note.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
And then I can also address the Hilton.
Go ahead.
The Hilton franchise. Hilton is a franchisor of hotels. They don't invest in hotels, but we apply for a franchise for the hotel, and it's up to the developer, private investors to pay for the project. We pay them a franchise fee. They also get fees paid on an annual basis to monitor or assist. They provide us with the reservation system, on the marketing, the sales assistance, and things like that. So we pay Hilton develop or franchise fees for the opportunity to have the Hampton Hotel, but they do not invest in a hotel as a corporation.
Okay, thank you. Open up for other public input as part of this public hearing.
Good evening, Ryan Stelter, 1408 Pinehurst Road. I serve on the Marshall Amateur Hockey Association Board of Directors and am also the tournament director for MAHA for the past 3 seasons. Annually, we host 64 teams over 5 weekends. In addition, we also host a Mite Jamboree, which brings in over 500 players throughout the weekend, as well as the opportunities to host district, region, and state tournaments. In total, MAHA hosts well over 1,000 families throughout every tournament season. Teams are coming from a 5-state region and are typically in town for a 2-night stay. It's my estimation that these families are renting over 2,000 hotel rooms or hotel nights every tournament season. In my time as their tournament director for MAHA, we've had to utilize hotels outside of Marshall several times. We've had teams stay in Canby, Redwood Falls, as well as both of the nearby casinos. I work closely with each of the local hotels, and the situation's gotten a lot better, but we still have times that teams are having to split up to be able to stay at and not be able to stay at the same hotel. I've heard more than once where other organizations weren't able to hold a function due to the fact that there was a hockey tournament in town and they were unable to secure hotel rooms for their guests. Although we continue to fill our tournaments very quickly, the number one reason we've lost returning associations is due to hotel availability. One particular association president told me that he recommended to his board that they do not attend tournaments in Marshall any longer because of the issues that they've had booking hotel rooms. That association hasn't returned to our tournaments at any level for the past 3 years. On tournament weekends, it's my understanding that we're utilizing a very high percentage of the available rooms in Marshall in which teams consider acceptable. Just as we search for quality hotels for our teams to stay at when we travel out of town, the teams that are coming to Marshall also have certain expectations of acceptable hotels, acceptable room types, and amenities that are offered at the hotels. I also know through my involvement in the girls hockey, the girls varsity boosters tried to host a smaller tournament during the summer months and were unable to do so because there was no availability of hotel rooms due to weddings and other events taking place in town. It's a great problem to have, but it's limiting us from being able to do more. They tried to secure those rooms more than 6 months in advance of when the tournament was going to take place. In March of 2024, we were fortunate enough to host the girls' Minnesota's 12UA state tournament. This state tournament brought 8 teams to Marshall from as far away as Warroad and Grand Rapids. Unfortunately, we were only able to provide hotel space for 6 of the 8 teams that traveled here from throughout Minnesota. We had 1 team in Canby and 1 in Redwood Falls. One of the other events taking place in town that weekend had teams staying as far away as Brookings and Worthington, all in the same weekend. So in closing, I'll include a direct quote from a survey that we conducted after that particular state tournament. I think this does a fantastic job summing up not just the need for additional hotel space, but also what we as Marshall are missing out on. So quote, "Our girls had a ton of awesome experiences outside of the tournament that our parenting group planned in Canby. As we were too far to enjoy and experience any of Marshall. No one ate, shopped, or stuck around for any of the other games in Marshall. Canby was a fantastic town and hotel and truly welcomed us. It just felt like the girls missed out on the town where the tournament was actually held. I believe we'd be very fortunate to have the availability of more hotel rooms to accommodate the needs and expectations of our tournament guests. Thank you."
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak as part of the public hearing? Any member of the council wish to speak as part of the public hearing?
Of course I do. I have several questions. First and foremost, Michaela, my concern is obviously the taxpayers and this $500,000 of TIF money. And first of all, I want to clarify, I used to own part of the Sleep-In. I no longer own that. There's no longer conflict of interest for the public out there that thinks there's no longer conflict of interest. We sold that back in March. So that conflict of interest is no longer there. So I can now speak more freely on this subject. But on this $500,000 of TIF money that they're asking for, this forgivable loan. If this project it goes forward, at what point do we have to give them that TIF money? Because my concern is I'm being told this TIF money has to be spent by the end of December. To get this project rolling, I don't know if they're going to be able to get this rolling by the end of December. So if that $500,000 does not go to them by the end of December, it goes back to the more restrictive TIF fund, correct? And how does that affect this project? Because my concern is all of a sudden they get this $500,000 and then this project doesn't go forward and we're out this $500,000. My concern isn't rooms. My concern is the taxpayers of Marshall and not losing this $500,000 on a project that is started and not finished. And that is one of my biggest concerns. And I know, Cassie, you brought up the fact of as they get into the financing of this, I'm very close friends with a banker who does hotel financing. I was on the phone with him today with Sharon and EJ. Business travel is down. You know that as well as I do. He said between 2% and 8% business travel is down throughout the nation. That's a struggle. Banks know that. Obviously, you guys trying to get financing, your banks are telling you the same thing. Business travel is down. So I want to be leery as we look at doing this with, again, it's the TIF money. The pay-as-you-go tax abatement, I support that because it has to be built. The project has to be going. They have to pay that back. I just am concerned about losing this $500,000 or any other financing that the city would do alongside this, is making sure our taxpayers are 100% protected on this TIF money. And if this project is not going by the end of December, you guys lose that $500,000. Does that put this project in jeopardy? Or if the county says, no, we're not doing tax abatement, which is very possible, again, where does it put this project at? Because the concern to me, again, is the taxpayer. $500,000 is money the city of Marshall cannot lose to their taxpayers. And there's a lot of questions out there on the viability of the financing of this, which I'm very, very attuned to what financing hotels takes. Because my biggest question is, why aren't we doing an SBA loan? Why are we going for tax abatement and not doing an SBA loan on this? Covering a lot of the financing on an SBA 504 loan. That's what, when we did the Sleep-In, that's what we did in the Sleep-In. We did an SBA loan, covered the 30%. The bank did the other financing. We came up with our money down. SBA loan's a guaranteed note, covers some of your risk on the other side, and you can go into a lot easier with your banker. I mean, those are questions that, and Bob, you're familiar with SBA loans.
So the, and Sharon, you may be able to clarify the unallocated TIF is really from, originated a number of years ago through Minnesota Corn Processors, the subsidy that was provided through TIF to them. That project ended up being more successful than what the original budget had been. So it generated that the excess increment that is now designated as the unallocated TIF. So so it originated with the subsidy that the city provided to MCP that was then repaid through taxes over the years. Now, my understanding is that the allocation for this project, while the state statute says that it needs to be expended by the end of 2025, the allocation of this for an eligible project is qualified. So it would be reimbursed over as the expenses for the project would be justified. It isn't like it would all be handed over up front.
Correct. Can I add to
Absolutely.
the mayor's? Thank you for bringing up some of the history. I know you are well-versed on this, greater than myself, because you've been a part of some of those developments. And Michaela can correct me too. But the tax increment financing pool of funds that we have right now were generated by prior TIF incentives provided to Minnesota Corn Processors. I know in the past, we've done a bunch of Schwann's developments as well. The Runnings Warehouse, which we're pretty proud of in Industrial Park, was a tax increment financing project. So just to give a little kind of background on how some of these funds were originally developed. We do have a special provision currently with legislature for this tax increment financing to use it for this particular type of use, which is a hotel development. It's typically not allowed for hotel development unless it's redevelopment. But in this case, we can use it. Two terms that Michaela has stated, and we'll make sure that this is in a business subsidy agreement because both the tax abatement and the tax increment financing were required to adopt or approve a business subsidy agreement, which will be coming to council at a later date. Rebates and reimbursable. So the tax abatement would only be paid out only after they pay their taxes first. And I know your concern, Councilmember Lizinski, is more on the tax increment financing. It is only paid out upon reimbursable approved invoices that they submit. We are going to put benchmarks in the business subsidy agreement to safeguard those particular disbursements to ensure that the hotel has progressed far enough along to ensure that there's little to no risk to the city. That's the way we'll structure the business subsidy agreement, and that will be coming back to council. I will also just say one other thing about the end of 2025. There is an end date for this particular tax increment financing. If we have a business subsidy agreement and it's structured as part of a loan or a grant, and those are terms that are in the business subsidy agreement statutes. That's why some of these terms are being used. It's actually language in those particular Minnesota statutes. So we want to be careful about how we use them and comply with law, but we'll ensure that they meet the business subsidy agreement statutes as well as the tax increment financing statutes. So I just want to add to that, Mr. Mayor.
But the money, from what I understand our discussion earlier today, and the money has to be, the TIF, I shouldn't say, the TIF had to be spent by the end of 2025, correct?
Correct.
So if the project is not started till 2026, that goes back to the TIF fund it came from, which has been left open for that cause to go back to that.
That's correct. This tax increment financing that we're proposing for this hotel development, it really would expire at the end of 2025. So we're going to be pushing the developers. They're well aware of this as well. I know Scott's nodding his head. But we are pushing them for 2025 construction.
And my concern is that we're not just all saying it's just a parking lot, then it freezes up, well, and that's where I would say, no, that's not acceptable.
Right.
So that is my concern, that all of a sudden it's October and we scratch some dirt and it's like, no, that is not going to work, because that's not due diligence to our taxpayers as we go forward with this TIF financing, with this $500,000 forgivable loan.
And your point is also correct in that this is one step in a multi-step thing that the private developer has to put together. We're only one piece.
We're one piece of a very large puzzle.
Do you have anything else, Jim?
No, that's,
Other input as part of the
Mr.
public
Mayor,
hearing?
yeah, and there's a couple things that I want to make sure that we clear up here or nail down. And one is that the TIF pool money is, while it was generated out of property tax revenue, it's not the taxpayer per se piece. It is TIF that overperformed. So it was speculation money. The TIF, there's two types of TIF. When you turn on tax increment financing, it either shuts off at a calendar time or on achieving a certain amount of money. And the MCP TIF was on time. And that overperformed. That's why there was a surplus of funds. This isn't general levy money. That comes back to general levy. So this play out that if we do this, it's upping the local taxpayer's piece of the pie. That's not correct. So it's important that when we start talking TIF and tax abatement, it can get really confusing and totally understandable, alarming to our taxpayers. But when and they did a great job of explaining up front here what the tax abatement looks like, and the numbers show. I think currently we're receiving about $3,000 a year on that piece of land. And after tax abatement, after the refund is made, that will be $12,400. 4 times the amount of money we're receiving now after the abatement is paid back. So it is a gross increase of 4 times the amount of money collected on that parcel. Those numbers, it's confusing. And I'm telling you, I've been on this, I'm going, I think, on year 11 or 12 on council. And I'm just really getting my head around it the last few times, simply because we have really good staff, Michaela, Lauren, Sharon, Bob, a whole wealth of knowledge on how this works. And it is complicated and it is confusing. And I totally appreciate it. I'm so grateful that we have the gallery of people that we have here today to talk this thing through, because it's important that we do due diligence. And Jim, I appreciate your inputs and your insight on it. But I also sit back, having been through the MAHA board, sitting on the Southwest Amateur Sports Commission, looking at how we struggle with probably one of the finest facilities in the state, and we struggle to host the level of tournaments that we could because we can't put heads in beds. Same thing with our industry. I'm listening to the letters, and granted, they're just letters. There's no money behind them from our industries that and other businesses that talk about the need to bring training into town, but they don't have accommodations. SMSU recruiting, Avera recruiting, how that business ticks and not having a quality place to put those people to stay does reflect on our community. And it is time that we step forward. Jim, you were part of the newest thing in town, and how long ago was that?
it was 11 years ago. No, I don't disagree that.
Yeah, okay.
I don't,
So, yep, all right, thank you.
Other input from the council as part of the public hearing?
I guess I'd like to note that the EDA board did meet on this, and Lauren explained, and we had a presentation from Vivacity as well. A lot of the same questions and concerns and conversation was had there too, and ultimately, they are fully in support of this.
Other input as part of the public hearing?
the only thing I want to warn, as you put heads on beds, we got to be cautious, and I'm not, like I said, I like the pay-as-you-go TIF. We got to be cautious as you build a new one. You may close one, so you may lose some of that tax revenue. Not saying that may happen, but you can oversaturate a hotel. Weekends are great. They're the gravy on top of the potatoes. Monday through Thursday is where you make your payments. And that's why, as Visitors Bureau, you know that, as bankers will tell you that. You guys as hoteliers know that. Friday and Saturday are your gravy. Monday through Thursday, make your payments. Your sports arena, that is a great revenue source. And that's where we need to keep in mind that as we give out an abatement to one, what you gain, you may ultimately gain, but you're not going to gain as much as we got to work to make sure we build them all up, not just the one up, because, and again, I'm in support of the tax abatement. I just say I'm in support of this, but we don't want to end up losing one because we don't want to sacrifice one to build one. And that's the trick we got to do here. It's a balancing act. How do we do that? Because we need to keep them all, we've achieved nothing.
Any other input as part of the public hearing?
Yeah, I would like to know Jim's reference to the SBA. Did you guys think about doing that?
Please repeat the question too that you're answering.
Sure, sir. The potential to pursue an SBA loan versus a private financing loan. We've actually, on two of our hotel developments, one in Grand Rapids and the other one in Decorah, Iowa, we're both franchised hotels. We looked into the SBA program and we could not get it to work. With the structure that we have with our limited partners with potentially 25 to 30 different investors, it became very arduous to try to get the documentation to work. I mean, we love the non-recourse, we love, interest rates on those kind of things, but we couldn't get it over the finish line on a development. Now, it probably has happened on development projects before, but it could be a resource for us that once we hit stabilization, we hit we're looking at between a 7 and a 10 year holding period, and then either recapitalize or refinance. And it might be at that time that because then it's a stabilized asset, and as you well know. So we did look at the SBA, but it did not work for our developments.
But it can work with 25 people because we made it work. So saying it can't work is not doing as much work as you should be doing, because we made it work as a group of local investors.
Council member, we probably worked close to 6 months on our project in Grand Rapids. And it was not our team that said we can't do it. It was basically said, we think you need to go to a private lender, which we did then.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Any other input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda to close the public hearing. Discussion on that motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll now consider the resolution for the tax abatement request. Any further discussion on the request?
The further discussion, I like the city's version, the staff's, you put it up to staff's version of the tax abatement of, was it 480,000, EJ?
And if there is a motion that numbers, that language should be included in the motion.
The resolution does contain not to exceed amount of 480,000.
That's the motion I would make, that the resolution at this time, I also make the motion that the resolution not exceed $480,000.
Motion by Jim. Is there a second to that motion?
I'd second.
Second by Amanda. Discussion?
The only discussion I have, there's a lot more pieces to go to this puzzle before this tax abatement completely goes through, correct?
That is a very good point in that this is a step.
Correct.
And there's a lot of other things that the private developer needs to do to ultimately have this project come to fruition. This is the first step.
Yep.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. And then the third action would be the business subsidy request. And I'll call on, there's, just to clarify the language on this request, because you also referenced some details on the business subsidy.
Correct. We are going to follow Minnesota statutes 116J.994, which regulates local business subsidies. And of course, again, this would include the tax abatement because it exceeds $150,000, which is the definition of a of a business subsidy in Minnesota statute. So the request would be to authorize staff to draft a business subsidy agreement related to the request of Marshall Community RE Fund for the development of the hotel on the parcel listed. Final terms of the business subsidy agreement contingent on city council approval. So that would be coming back to council.
So the motion would be to authorize staff, and again, as Sharon just stated, this would then come back to the council for approval once that agreement is drafted. Questions
Nice.
about that?
I move the staff to draft the business agreement.
I would second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Thank you, everyone. We will move on with the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. If you'd bring the items up on the screen for the consent agenda. And they include, consider the approval of tobacco license for Marshall Tobacco, Inc., consider the approval of an off-sale gambling permit for the American Legion, consider the approval of a temporary liquor license for the Lyon County Ag Society, consider the approval for an outdoor public fireworks display for the 4th of July celebration, consider the amendments to the 2025 fee schedule for cannabis business registration, consider the request of the Downtown Business Association for Crazy Days, Thursday, July 17, 2025. Consider the amendment 2 to commercial lease and fixed base operators agreement with Southwest Aviation, the introduction of the ordinance amending section 86-29 variances and 8648 procedures, and then finally consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member wants removed for separate discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Jim,
I'll second.
seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Agenda item number 13, consider going into closed session pursuant to Minnesota statute 13D-03 to discuss strategy for union negotiations. Is there a motion to go into closed session for this purpose?
So move. Second.
Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We will go into closed session at this time. After a brief closed session, we'll come back into open session. I'll reconvene. We are back in open session. We are on agenda item number 13, which is consider the approval of the labor agreement and the memorandum of agreement between the City of Marshall and AFSCME Council 65. Sheila Dubs is our Human Resource Director. Sheila, do you want to give any overview comments?
Thank you. Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will do a brief overview of both the contract and the memorandum of agreement that we're asking for approval for this evening. The union has ratified this agreement, but the council would need to approve this by resolution. So staff did meet in negotiations with AFSCME for 2 sessions, and those were unsuccessful, so we went into mediation with AFSCME on March 5th. A tentative agreement as a result of that mediation session has been reached. I'll summarize changes to the labor agreement. There were several housekeeping items, such as updated dates, the table of contents, replacing some technical items, and then removing language about prior compensation study in Appendix A. And then we'll move on to Article 18. There were 3 clauses added that apply to the earned safe and sick time leave allowing the city to maintain current staffing levels when we have an emergency or community need, and to improve the documentation provisions outlined so that the city can request additional documentation when necessary from employees for sick time taken. Article 22, a clause was added relating to leave of absences pertaining to the new Minnesota paid family and medical leave law, in that the employer and the employee will split that premium 50-50, with the employee's share being payable through payroll deductions. Appendix A was also updated with the new schedules that was agreed to, that being a 4% general wage increase for each year of the agreement, and then market adjustments to steps A through I and step J, effective January 1st of each year going forward in the contract. The first day of the pay period, that includes January 1st for all 3 years of the contract. And then finally, a memorandum of agreement as a pilot program for our wastewater facility department. This is a way for us to incentivize our employees to obtain job-related MPCA certifications, which improve their skills and allow us to achieve our goals at the facility as a whole. The goal of the program is to prepare a pool of employees that can fill a variety of our advanced roles and leadership positions when they become available. And that pilot MOA will expire when a successor contract begins. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Thank you for your work and your explanation. Are there questions?
I move approval of the labor agreement and memorandum of agreement between the city and AFSCME Council 65.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we will move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Once again, thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Sharon, for your work on this. We'll move then to agenda item number 14, consider the request for an interim use permit to have a reduced setback for a garden in a R1 low-density resident district at 4 adjacent lots. Ilya.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So this is a request for interim use permit to allow rain pollinator garden next to the property line. Interim use permits, one of the reasons for granting them is some temporary uses, and obviously gardens are temporary uses. The request is to have the garden basically between, right next to the property line on both sides. You can see the kind of sketch here. And this area is already low and has water quite often. The reason for the request is that the ordinance actually requires that the gardens are at least 5 feet from the property lines. But in this case, it makes sense to allow this thing to have right next to the property line again, because the low point is right along the property line. The interim use permit will go to each parcel individually, and there are 2 owners, and the conditions are, as you can see here, to comply with the ordinance in general for maintenance, not to exceed 12 feet, minimum 5-foot setbacks on east and west side, and this interim use permit will expire if the property is sold, and that it will expire for that particular property. So whenever the property is sold, that interim use permit will expire for that property, but not for the rest of them.
And this was considered by the Planning Commission. Any comments by the Planning Commission?
No, not really any concerns. Question about drainage to the pond, but that was clarified, and no concerns. Everyone was okay.
Any questions?
My only question is, they're aware of if the utilities have to get back there, that their garden is on an easement?
Yes, correct. There was a conversation.
And I have
about
no concerns with it, just so they know that the utilities could drive through their garden.
And the owner is here, he can maybe answer some questions.
Well, so you're aware the utilities may just go plowing right through that baby? Okay. It's mine. name looked familiar. I recognize the other name, but there's a lot, Anderson's a popular last name.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I don't know where they live.
I'd make a motion to approve.
By Amanda, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. Motion does pass. We'll move then, thank you, Elia. We'll move then to agenda item number 15, adjust the city cost participation for a sidewalk replacement cost participation policy. Call on Jason Anderson, City Engineer, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in 2012, the city started this program where we participate in the replacement of sidewalk in front of properties. Back in 2021, we adjusted the amount and the manner in which we participate in that program. The current iteration of the program, we participate $2.50 per square foot of walk being replaced, up to $750. We would like to amend the program to increase the amount to $3.25 per square foot, up to $1,250 per property, just to keep up with cost of sidewalk replacement. You're eligible to receive this funding, provided that the work you do is ADA compliant. You take out a sidewalk permit with the city in the amount of $50 is what the current cost of the permit is. And the walk must serve the general public and be in the right of way. So if those criteria are met, you qualify for the program, and it's a great program to help incentivize proper maintenance of our sidewalks.
And this was considered by the Public Improvement Committee. Any comments from that committee? So questions the council has? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Craig. Discussion? The only discussion I would have is, assuming this passes, first off, this is a good program that has been kind of underutilized. So I think the more we can do to promote it, perhaps on our social media page, would be good. It's a good way for homeowners that have those sidewalks that might have been lifted up by, tree roots or otherwise deteriorated, so that they're kind of a tripping hazard, to have them replaced, but also have some cost participation to help with the cost of that replacement. So,
Jason, do we ever hit the max of 10,000?
In recent years, it really hasn't been well utilized. To Mayor Burns' comments, it's really hit or miss. Sometimes we have maybe just one or two property owners participate. Other times it's a little more. I forgot to look how much we had in the budget. I think it's $10,000 in the street department line item budget. I believe that's where it's still at. That's the amount we started putting in back when we started the program, and it's never been increased because it's just kind of been enough.
any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 16, consider the authorization to submit an application for the MnDOT Airport Fuel System Grant. Once again, Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a one-time grant opportunity for funding our fuel tanks at the airport. Typically, airport fuel cells are eligible for grants, but they don't score very well within the typical capital grant program. So MnDOT Aeronautics has announced this one-time program for fuel systems statewide. They've made it pretty clear that this is a one-time, not a recurring thing. They just note that they have a lot of fuel systems on the CIP requests, so they wanted to make sure that they tried to meet the need. Our current fuel system is owned by our fixed-base operator, Midwest Aviation. We've got two tanks, one for Jet A fuel and one for general aviation gas, the 100 OLED. Both are 30-plus years old and generally in need of replacement. You can see on that diagram the existing fueling area on the kind of the southeast side of the drawing. The proposed new location would be closer to our current arrival departure building up in the northwest there, one of those two locations. We do have a cost estimate for the project included in the memo here. It's just about $1.2 million. A grant would be a 60-40 split, leaving us with an estimated $480,000 local cost participation. The grants are due, the applications are due by the end of the month, by Friday of this week, actually. So we had kind of a short window to get our request in. Airport Commission, the FBO are all certainly in support of this project. I would note that if we invest in it as a city, that we would own those tanks and the FBO would no longer own them. So we would have to work out an arrangement in our lease agreement and negotiations that we're currently undergoing to just better put into writing how that relationship's going to work and what our take of the profit will be from fuel sales. So that's all yet to be determined. But if we apply for a grant, we would expect to hear back by the end of June from MnDOT on an award, and we would have to put a grant request letter in by the end of the year. So applying for a grant doesn't commit us to doing the project. I know we're not kind of in our typical budget cycle. We typically do capital in the fall, but I think it would behoove us to put our hat in the ring and see if we could get a grant written and see if it fits our needs when we go to work at the budget coming up.
So if everything would fall into place and the grant would be awarded, we'd be talking about a 2027 project?
That's tough to say. I couldn't get a straight answer out of MnDOT. I think it could be. I think that's a possibility. They would prefer, I think, that we bid the project in 2026 by mid-year. And then how we formulate that, whether it's not to be constructed until 27 or if it could start in 26, would have to be up for discussion.
That would give us more flexibility in terms of budgeting, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have, I think it's 3 or 4 years to spend the money if we get a grant agreement. But the trouble with state grants is you have to actually bid the project and come forward with bids to get a grant agreement. So you kind of have to, and it gets difficult to hold a contract for too long once a contractor submits a bid.
Okay. Sharon?
I just want to add very briefly that the fixed base operator several years ago had requested consideration of fuel farm replacement. He also mentioned the option of the city charging a fuel flowage fee, which would not make up the 40% on a fast basis, but it would be some revenue that could be generated in part. And I do believe he has had some requests for self-serve fueling, which may actually increase flowage of the fuel out there. But that's something that we have not begun discussions on with him or city staff in detail. But I did want to add that part of it from the FBO.
Questions for Jason?
Just a comment from the sitting on the Airport Commission. This has been a subject that's come up multiple times every year. I know I brought it forward here a couple times on my reports back. And like Jason and Sharon both said, the FBO is very concerned about the tanks and his responsibility with the tanks. And irregardless of who owns them, it's our airport, it's on our land. So we have a responsibility. I believe so I have two concerns. One is I don't want us to be in the fueling business, but I think we have to own the site because we own the property. I don't think that's too different than what Metropolitan Airports Commission does with their airport fueling systems. The whole thing is I think we need to work hard with our FBO to make sure that we have a credible oversight of those that doesn't drop that back on our staff directly. So that's my only concern with it, but I don't think there's an option other than us owning the fueling system. I think that's pretty well, already cast in play that we're going to end up having to do it. I'd say sooner better than later because those things are tick, tick, tick with what's out there now.
With that input, I'd entertain a motion to authorize the staff to apply for this grant opportunity.
I so move.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 17, the project ST-034, the intersection control evaluation for the intersection at Susan Drive and US 59 frontage road. The action item would be to accept the report, it would not include acting on the report, but accepting the report. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. Brief background on this topic. We actually got approval back in fall of 2023 to start this report. At the time, staff was interested in submitting for grants, specifically LRIP grant for this intersection's repair and replacement. As we know, if you drive this area, the pavement is nearing the end of its useful life. We do need to do something with it. And staff just wanted to research opportunities to make it function a little better. It's a very big intersection. It's wide. There's a lot of lanes. And once the old Shopko building is now starting to fill up with Harbor Freight and the Marshall store and hopefully another retailer of some sort, you just foresee the issues getting a little worse. So staff initiated this report, worked with Bolton and Mank to do an official evaluation, which helps to justify intersection changes and helps you to get grant funding. So we never finished it. Back in 2023, early 24, the layouts that we were creating were not well liked at the time by the owner of the building. They say we're trying to seek tenants. Specifically, the layout we were working with at the time showed an access elimination into the old Shopko site, and that was unfavorable at the time. It's that one that Stevens got pulled up. They weren't happy with losing that access at that location, even though we planned to relocate it to the north. So we kind of stopped at that point because we were having to work too fast to try to meet the grant deadline. Fast forward to now, we've just kind of circled back and wanted to finish this report, tie a bow on it. So that's what we're bringing forward to tonight. In addition to this layout, which is, I think, staff's preferred layout, which takes Susan Drive and kind of angles it and makes it the priority street with no stop sign, and forces the Walmart access, which is labeled as Margaret Avenue in this drawing, to be a T intersection into it. And it eliminates the direct access into the Harbor Freight and Marshall's parking lot and moves it further to the north. We like this one because it removes one direction of traffic to make it simpler. It shrinks the overall paved area significantly and brings everybody closer to each other at the intersection to make quicker and better decisions. It just feels better to us to prioritize the state aid route, which is Susan Drive. Another option in there, I think if we go to the next one, was to eliminate the access to Walmart at this location altogether. If you did this, you would probably have to pair it with improvements on Boyer Drive at the Walmart access, something like a mini roundabout. PIT committee, when we presented it, not real in favor of this. And we thought we had to present it because it is an option that makes the intersection better, although we figured it wouldn't be very popular. Then there's one more layout that's the general idea of just, if you left it pretty much as it is, but just shrink all the lanes. Take all the lanes and reduce the number. This shows 2 lanes coming out of Walmart, but you could go to 1, and you've got generally just 2-lane traffic on all legs except for the intersection where you go from 4 lanes to 3, one going the other direction. So all of these were vetted by the traffic engineers at Bolton Mank, run through models. They all provide a high level of service, no issues with traffic. The idea in all of these exercises was to look at how can you shrink the paved area, prioritize pedestrians, make it safer and easier for drivers to make decisions. We don't, by approving this report, we're not committing the council to doing any of these. It's perfectly acceptable for us to mill and overlay the intersection, put it back exactly how it is, and carry on for the next 15 years. But if the council likes any of these layouts and city staff sees an opportunity to access grant funds, we could certainly try to apply for them off of any of these layouts. As I mentioned, staff does prefer the first layout that I showed, where Susan Drive becomes a through street to the signal, offers better through movements through that area. But I know it's a pretty big change from what we have out there today, and I'm not sure what people's thoughts are on it. But I'll stop rambling now. This is the report in front of you. Again, we're not tied to making any of the improvements, but we wanted to put a bow on this and finalize it.
Thank you, Jason. And again, the action item is not approving the report, it's accepting the report. So the report's been done, and now we accept the receipt of that report. Questions the council has? If not, is there a motion to accept the report?
I'll motion.
Motion by Amanda,
Second.
seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 18, consider appointments to various boards, commissions, and authorities. The council met in special session earlier this afternoon and interviewed applicants for two different boards or commissions, and based on those interviews, I would recommend that Jeff Thompson be appointed to a vacant term on the Convention and Visitors Bureau that will expire December 31st, 2026, and that Tawny Schatzko be reappointed to a second term on the Economic Development Authority for a term that will expire May 31st, 2031. I would offer that as a recommendation and entertain a motion from the council to affirm.
I'd make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Amanda, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. The motion does pass. We'll move then to Commission Board Liaison reports. Craig?
Nothing, sir.
Amanda?
Nothing.
Amanda?
We've talked about everything tonight.
And Jim?
MMU met last Wednesday. They're still working on the replacement of the manager. Dave Shalkoff, I think of his name though. He likes to chit chat. I'll just say that. Nice fella, but he likes to chit chat. Baker Tilly, why are you laughing, Craig? He does. Baker Tilly did have the gentleman that was helping with the search resign on them. So they have a new gal by the name of Jean that has stepped in to help with that. And they're whittling down the nominees for the position. I think it's down to 4 now, and then they're going to start doing interviews. So other than that, the utilities is humming along. They run a very nice program over there, so.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. We'll move then to council member individual items. Craig?
I'm going to leave my soapbox parked tonight. Thank you.
Because of the chit chat comment, huh?
I'm all good. You're fine. I just got to giggle.
I'm good.
Amanda?
Don't have anything.
And Jim?
I think I've chit chatted enough tonight.
We'll move then to our staff reports. Sharon?
In the essence of time, I have no report tonight.
And Jason?
No report.
Pam?
Just
Attorney?
a quick update to let the council know that after the last meeting, we have served and filed that motion for injunction and declaration related to Broadmoor Estates. So we have a hearing scheduled for July 16th.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. The remaining items on the agenda are for information, are Planning Commission minutes from May, our listing of building permits, as well as our listing of upcoming meetings. Is there any other items to come forward at this meeting this evening? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion.
Second.
By Amanda, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close.
There we go. I was reading something there.
We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We are adjourned.